So here we'll welcome Simone Hume from Amazon Web Services, who's going to share her expertise and great stories about why and how you should focus on your supporters' data to raise more.
Hi, my name is Simone Hume and I lead the UK not-for-profit team here at Amazon Web Services, and I'm really delighted to be with you all today. We're going to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes covering the following. We're going to have a look at this year so far and the impact it's having on the not-for-profit market segment. We're going to look at what a digital experience is and why it matters more today than ever about having a digital experience. We're going to look at the important role of data, often data that you may already have, and why it's so important when creating a better experience for your users and beneficiaries. And how our methodology of working backwards can help you, perhaps, and your organisations work out what's really important in terms of what you're trying to achieve for your users, your donors, and your beneficiaries, and perhaps help you drive innovation. Now, please remember, use the chat box throughout the presentation for any questions that you might have, and we will cover them at the end. Please do share your name and perhaps even your organisation. Now, let's get to know one another a little bit better. This data was taken from the Charities Aid Foundation, so you might already recognise it. And it was from the coronavirus briefing published in June this year. It was based on 2 surveys throughout the first wave of the pandemic in the UK. It doesn't make pretty reading. Now, during this presentation, I'm going to share with you some non-profit organisations and what they're doing and their digital experiences, and how going digital is actually helping them reduce cost, it's helping them to increase flexibility with increased experiences to their beneficiaries, even during these really tough times. Now, we live in a world that is increasingly reliant on our ability to do what we do, when we choose to do it, and however we choose to get it done. From banking to cycling, from hailing a cab to dinner experience, dining out. The way we do things has never been more reliant than it is today on service providers making their products and services as accessible as possible to us, all whilst making us, the consumer or the beneficiary or donor, feel like it's an experience that's specific to our needs and wants, and it's personal to us. With the shift away from mass audience physical events, the opportunity to create experiences tailored to individual needs, to our needs, our likes and even our dislikes, is becoming increasingly important, to ourselves. Like most organisations, I'm sure that you hold data about your donors and your fundraisers, your beneficiaries, your service users, your volunteers, and even your staff. But how many of you are making use of that data to support organisational-wide decision-making? How many of you are using that data and sharing that data to improve your ability to deliver against your mission or transforming your fundraising efforts, for example? The data that you hold is really rich and it's really, really valuable. And it likely holds a lot of keys to unlocking digital success for your organisation. The challenge and opportunity is to understand the data and also how it can be used, and then unlocking the data to create new models of working and perhaps even new revenue streams. As the possibility of physical in-person events and fundraising activities that they support becomes ever more challenging, the benefit of digital events and experiences becomes increasingly important. Digital events are not only safe and keep your people, supporters, and donors safe, they also allow you to engage without the typical physical constraints of size or scale. You have now the ability to react at scale and on demand. Historically, comic relief encountered large costs in both financial cost and also resource-related costs associated to having physical technology that was used to support the single night of television. Since migrating to an on-demand cloud-based solution with AWS, Comic Relief have realised 93% of cost savings. If you have a look in March 2015, they were actually paying 83,908 compared to 5,393 in March 2019. But it's not just the cost savings, it's also the scale and the flexibility that cloud technology has brought to Comic Relief. It's actually increased the capacity for Comic Relief to cope with up to 350 donations per second, meaning that they capture every single donation opportunity without any concern that the lack of capacity from having physical technology would result in loss of fundraising or revenues. Now, currently, many organisations have individual data silos, often held by individual functions such as marketing department, fundraising, membership, etc. But they're each separate, or else each organisation or part of the organisation holds that data in separate silos. It's usually just because that's how the organisation's grown, how it's matured independently over many years. And business functions typically aren't great at sharing or making available the data to other functions across the business and or even to third parties that you may be trying to join up services with, for example. The approach is not unusual, and it's not only we don't only find this in the not-for-profit market segment. It just often results in a lack of visibility of how services are truly used or what the donor journey might look like from start to finish. If we consider for a moment what that data holds, and when used to build a fuller picture of your donors and users, for example, a joined up data environment will provide really usable and valuable insights. It can be used to identify gaps, problems, patterns that can help you to ease and improve the donor journey. But data is more than just a commodity. When placed at the centre of organisations' approach, it really supports improved collaboration and communication between individual teams and functions. It drives and establishes a unified experience for staff, volunteers, and donors. National Trust recognised the benefit, exactly the understanding its supporters' relationships and interactions would have on their ability to make the relationship with members more meaningful. By integrating multiple data silos, National Trust enabled a 360-degree view of its members and its donors. And the insights from the solution allowed the National Trust to create personalised marketing activities, increasing visitor numbers by understanding how members and visitors interact with individual properties, for example, and the services that they were using so that they could tailor each individual's experience. At Amazon, we have built a culture of innovation, putting the customer at the heart of everything we do and working backwards from there. And this approach of starting with the customer to enable innovation is rooted in a culture within our organisation, which is about 4 concepts. Customer obsession, starting everything we do and working backwards from the customer. Long-term thinking, being very stubborn on our vision, but flexible on the details. And having a willingness to fail or look at it another way, experiment quickly. And also having a willingness to be understood for a very long period of time. We're very comfortable with that. These 4 pillars are the basis of how we organise for innovation at Amazon. We have mechanisms such as working backwards process, and I'm going to give you a little bit more insight into that in a second. We have the architecture, the tool set, in terms of how our technology is architected by having loosely coupled applications, for example, and microservices architectures. And we have the culture and people aligned to the organizational ethos and set up to innovate. For example, we have 2 pizza teams. That means a team consisting of a maximum of 6 to 8 people, typically enough that 2 pizzas would feed. That's if you're not going by those really big American pizzas. And we put together what we call 2 pizza teams to work on new services and solutions for our customers. So a little deeper insight into working backwards. When we have an idea for a new service or a solution to help with a customer challenge or idea, we start with these 5 questions. We actually have these on our lanyards when we join Amazon. The purpose is really to make sure that everyone stays very focused on the customer. So once we have really solid answers to these questions, only then do we move to the next part of the working backwards process, which is about creating a press release. So let's have a little look at these questions. So who is the customer? Or in your case, who is the beneficiary? Who is the donor, for example? If you can't answer that question clearly, if we are unable to be specific about the customer and even the persona of who the customer is, then we don't move forward. The next question is, what is the customer problem or challenge or opportunity that we believe they're facing? Now, after you do this quite a few times, you actually start to realize that the next question is the hardest to get right, which is kind of surprising. And that is the most important customer benefit clear? So is the value there for the customer? Is it about selection for the customer? Is it about convenience? Is it about trust? Trust is so important. It is so hard to earn, but it is really easy to lose. This is all about getting focused about what it is that you're looking to create. Is it really, really going to benefit the customer? And how do you know what your customer needs or wants? What data do you have? Have you done any research? If not, you need to go and find some research. We are a very data-driven organization. So whether it's numbers or qualitative, you need to have the research and the data to support answering these questions. And what does the customer experience look like? And this is where you're really starting to describe what your solution looks like and what that experience would look like for your customer. Now, before I finish, I want to share one more example with you. And this final example is of how Yates UK have worked backwards from the needs of the people that they support. To support users at the start of the pandemic and due to the demographic that Yates UK serves, they recognised it wasn't possible to adopt an out-of-the-box approach to service delivery. So they used Amazon Connect, which is our call centre in the cloud, to rapidly transform their Silver Line service. And they transformed that into a virtual call centre to allow volunteers to answer calls from home. Now, as well as being able to quickly meet a surge in demand earlier in the year, the solution also opened up the opportunity for volunteers to take part if they were shielding for medical reasons or for those who may have previously felt precluded due to family commitments. Now, I've shared some examples of how nonprofit organisations are delivering digital services, from fundraising to frontline services, along with a little insight into how we innovate at Amazon. Now, we would just love to innovate with you. So here are our details. Please feel free to connect over email or LinkedIn, and let's go innovate together. Here's some more contact details. For more information, you can visit our website and also have a read of our blog. And with that, I want to thank you very much for participating today. And now we're going to go to questions and answers.
Shall we delve into the first question?
Yes, certainly.
Super. Um, first question from Marianne Parsons,
Mm-hmm.
and she's asking whether small charities can use, afford, and benefits from AWS, and how can they go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the real benefits that cloud technology brings to smaller organizations, because previously, when before cloud existed, sometimes you had to have very deep pockets to be able to purchase infrastructure and engage with certain partners in the industry.
Mhm.
So it wasn't as readily accessible to all. But technology is really being democratized in terms of it's now available to everybody in every country at every level. So people are now able to use cloud technology globally, and the pricing is all the same. There are different, from an AWS perspective, all of our pricing is published. And in fact, if you think about a compute instance, a lot of the compute instances, we call them EC2. They start at less than 1 penny, an hour. So they're very very low cost. In addition to that, we also have a free tier. So all of our services most of our services have a free tier. For example, compute, again, I think it's 750 hours of I think it's a T level, certain types of machine types. And we actually give them as free, basically. So until
Okay.
you're using more than 750 hours, then it is free of charge. From a not-for-profit point of view, we also have a number of not-for-profit programs. So if you engage with us, we will help and support you. Our sort of mantra is that we want not-for-profit organizations to experiment for free. So we want to help you test this new technology if it's new to yourselves, really understand and how to create solutions in the cloud at very little cost to you, well, at no cost for experimentation. And then once it's adding value to the business, then the pricing models would come in. The last thing that I want to say about the pricing is that we also have a number of different discount programs and models as well that we can share with organizations. And they're already readily available on the AWS website too.
Yes, absolutely. I really like the fact that you insisted on the sort of testing before, moving forwards and growing as well. That's quite important. For charities that are interested in the AWS credit, they can go onto our Charity Digital Exchange website to find out more. The credits are not available at the moment, but they will be back from January onwards. We'll get to all the details about that very shortly.
Yeah.
And we also are working with some of your amazing colleagues, Simon, on great content that will help charities as well.
Yeah, Lisa, I would just say that's one program, but we have got other programs available as well. So please do reach out just directly
Yeah,
also, because we have different programs that we can tap into to make
yeah,
sure that experimentation phase is still at no cost to the organization. So please do reach out to us jointly or directly,
yeah.
and we will definitely support those organizations.
Absolutely. Super. Thank you very much for answering the question. We have another one. So, our organization has huge amounts of data, and we recognize the challenge you mentioned about sharing across teams. What would you say are the first steps in beginning to identify what that data is and how could we use it?
Okay, so from a technology point of view, the technology is there to do fantastic bits of insight into your data so that you can get the most out of your data as an organization. So let's move the technology to one side, because from an AWS perspective, the data is there. But for many organizations, it's around actually, first of all, understanding what data you have, understanding the different touch points of that data. And what I mean by that is actually understanding, if you take, let's take, for example, a donor journey. Yeah. So if you're a donor into a charitable organization, have you actually mapped the journey of the donor within your organization? So do you understand how many people touch data on the donor, for example, and actually have that real understanding of how many touch points there are? And actually, are you sharing that data between the different business units within your own organization? There's also a secondary question, which is around collaborating with other service providers and public authorities, for example. So you may need to share data with the local council, depending on what your mission is as an organization. So again, that's another thing to think about in terms of, if you're sharing information with the local authority and they need, and vice versa, then how many people within their organization or different departments are touching that data too. So it's having a really good insight into the journey of whatever service you're using, and the people, the users, the beneficiaries of that service. So that's one key thing that you need to think about and start to work out that journey and how you can actually collaborate. But I think the place really to start, and I mentioned it in the presentation a little bit as well, is really start from the customer. We call it customer, but actually a beneficiary, the donor, and work backwards from their journey, and actually understand what their journey is today, but then look for challenges to that and look for opportunities to improve it. And that's when you start to open up areas for collaboration. You then think about actually having diverse teams working together. So not just maybe the fundraising team working in isolation and then throwing something over to IT and saying, look, can you go and build this for us? But actually having these, we call them pizza teams, made up from people across the organization. So I'll give you one little example. If you've got a donor journey and that hits finance, it hits fundraising, it hits IT, the data might also hit some other parts of the business as well, other lines of business. Why don't you think about creating a pizza team that has a member from each one of those silo parts of the business, and then look at the journey, look at the challenges, and look at the opportunity. And we would love to get involved and help people understand how we would approach that. But many organizations have their own ways of doing this as well. Our way is not the only way. And if organizations get a little bit of benefit from what we do, we're more than happy to share that methodology in more detail in the form of workshops.
Yeah, super. And yeah, very important there, collaboration between teams, avoiding data silos, and making sure that that data is shared across all organizations, so that everybody can take ownership for it and share their thoughts about it. We have time for a couple more questions. Another one: how can I get the rest of our board to recognize that doing things differently means more than simply changing laptops for tablets and desktops or phones?
Yeah, and I just touched on it a little bit there actually about the technology, because often the technology teams will be asked by the business, I've got this requirement, I need you to go away and fulfill it. So I need new laptops, I need this new server standing up. Rather than actually bringing the IT teams into, as I mentioned before, these diverse teams where you have the pizza teams and actually creating the solution together. So I think it's really important to think about how you can actually align your teams to your mission. So think about, rather than throwing ideas over the fence to IT and saying, just go and do that, and then wondering maybe why that solution didn't work. I would maybe challenge organizations to think, did you really work backwards from the customer again? Did you really think about that solution? What were your proof points? What were your data points? And were IT part of that journey with you? so that they can actually understand that. Now, it's when we do working backwards, it is very much business led, but IT, you still need IT to be part of that discussion with you so that they understand how they're going to go and build things. And I would also say it's really important to think about your setting yourselves up for success as an organization as well, and actually thinking about how your skill sets within the organization. So if you're moving to cloud technology, do you have the resources? Do you have the skills? If not, that's fine, because for example, from an AWS point of view, we have lots of training courses, and we would actually help build up your skills. So we could do a skills audit, for example, with your teams. We could support them, but also we have a very large partner network as well. And these partners can either come in and do parts of the services for you or help you set up, and also do skills transfer as well. But I think the real thing from a board perspective is the fact that if you are aligning to the mission of that organization and you're truly driving to improve the experience of your beneficiaries, of your donors, whatever your missions are, that is going to open up the channel of communication with your board members and your senior stakeholders, because you're talking about why you exist. So coming back to your core values as an organization, and actually looking at how you can improve those things. I've mentioned the working backwards methodology quite a bit, but we actually have a workshop that we actually do with senior business leaders within an organization to open up that whole discussion. So we would be more than happy to look at how we could engage and support that as well. And there is no cost for that, by the way, in case people are worried about that.
Very important. Well, great. Thank you again so much, Simone. Thank you for a great presentation, and we really looking forward to hearing more about AWS and how you can help nonprofits.
Thank you.
Thank you.